Good morning and welcome to Bench Objectives, the podcast sponsored by Belltree. Today's topic will explore benchmarking data in oil and gas with Eugenio Diaz and myself, Grant Stewart, who will be host for today. Our guest speaker today is Eugenio Diaz. He's Repsol's Technical Services and HSE Senior Manager for Spain and Algeria. Eugenio has more than 20 years of international experience in the oil and gas industry, specializing in reservoir management, data development, and production operations for a wide range of oil and gas fields globally. Eugenio's technical background is extensive with expertise in reservoir engineering, including hydrocarbon resource and reserve estimation and reporting, as well as a strong background in production engineering and hydrocarbon accounting. Very good to speak to you again. Thank you so much for joining. You are our second guest on Bench Objectives. Would you be kind enough for our listeners to give a little bit about your background and perhaps your journey through oil and gas, so from the early days to present day?
Definitely. First, thank you, Grant, for having me in this podcast. It's a real pleasure. So you already mentioned most of my experience, as you mentioned. So my background is focusing two key areas: is production and reservoir engineering. So my journey started sometime in the late 90s, and I started as a production engineer, working in operations in oil and gas. I started in Venezuela, then I moved to Argentina, and I'm go through production engineering duties mainly, then supervising some fields. And then I decided I had to gain more knowledge. So I moved to subsurface. So again, I started as a reservoir engineering. First part was operational side. So well testing design, supervising well logging, for examples. And then start moving my journey into subsurface world, just building my first subsurface model. Then I start leading teams, supporting mainly designing field development plans, and then supporting assets in optimized recovery factors. So I always like to say that you have to put a tag on my experience to be a recovery factor chaser, the one who is always looking for maximize the economic recovery factor from our fields and trying to look ahead. It's always anticipating, exploring new technology, new techniques, always to push to the limit how much hydrocarbon we can get from the surface, mainly because our society needs energy and we are part of that energy supply to the society.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. It's very insightful and quite clearly very strong objectives, which is completely aligned to our experience within Belltree, and quite clearly hydrocarbon has a significant part to play in the energy mix for many decades to come, and should not in any way, shape or form be sidelined or marginalized. It's very important. If we can start off the podcast, data in oil and gas. Data plays a crucial role in the oil and gas industry. How do you see data analytics impacting upstream performance and field development? And I guess as an add-on, could you share a specific example of how improved data management leads to measurable improvements in reservoir simulation and production performance?
Yeah, definitely. It's a very good question. So I will say the upstream performance, it would be divided in two parts. First part is just field development, just from discovery until production. And then when we have production operation and reservoir management. So data analytics definitely have a huge impact in the four components, what I think data analytics, from analyzing what happened, just using data to identify what happened, and then why everything happens in the past. It's important to advise the root cause what could happen. Third, using data to predict what might happen in the future, will likely happen in the future. And lately, what if the data is just telling us or indicate how to act something. So in the field development, I think the key value for data analytics, what as explained to the business, is to shorten the project life cycle. historically, our life cycle in development from discovery, as I mentioned, to production to years. So we have plenty of data, right? We in the worldwide have been producing and development fields for more than 100 years. So we have plenty of data we can use in advantage of the crucial objective to reducing that time. We're able to lever that analytics into not just reducing the project cycle to be very quickly deliver energy to the society, but also support the decision-making process more data-driven. So definitely everything have to improve the business performance. The second part is more related to production, where we're on production. If we see production operation from the perspectives of value chains, from subsurface to export, for me, there are 4 components. Subsurface is the source of the hydrocarbon, then the wells, which is connecting the subsurface to the surface, then we have process facility, and then we have the export. So in terms of how the data analytics can improve that, the objective is to maximize the production, the uptime, produce and deliver more energy to society. So data analytics definitely, as I mentioned, help to optimize reservoir management. With the data, the pressure we have, we constantly taking data so we can improve the production from the wells, but it's not just enough improving production from the well. It's also required that the equipment in our process plan, they have the most uptime possible. So the combination of the system, the value chain, we deliver more and more. So summarizing, that's for me the 2 key impact in data analytics, from the reducing the time of the development cycle from discovery to production, but also where you're in production to maximize the value of maximizing production through time. So we combine those 2, definitely data is improving the performance. Some example in my experience, I'm going to use this one in the for the easy one. I just went to visit one of our peaks in the Sahara in Nigeria, and I went to the company man, and she was showing me, we have the company an algorithm that is recommended what is the best operation from the rigs. So there's always telling you, taking the data, analyzing the data from the ROP, for example, rates and pressures, and it's all recommended to the company man what action to improve what we did. There's improvement to 5 to 10% in time in drilling, because this algorithm is always analyzing the data, just not taking from the well. The algorithm is being learned from wells worldwide. We have a central operational center worldwide to look, collecting data all the time for our wells operation, and that algorithm is always analyzing the data and making recommendations to the company man. So that's one key example. In the surface simulation, yes, I think we are improving in using data analytics. The QIQC is part of the modeling, is part of it. Now we have some algorithms to go through a static model, for example, to see what makes sense or not, and I give you a report that a model with some KPI is not good or bad. So we have to set a criteria to check if the static model is good or not. So we run the algorithm, analyze the data in a 3D model, and tell us to the geoscientists what improvement to do that. Also, we are working data analytics to anticipate potential issues in dynamic modeling. So we're running those algorithms with this data analytics. I mean, data analytics is part of the oil and gas. So we have to build a model. We need to integrate a huge amount of data, but we use manually. Now, the lever now we can take advantage of capitalize the data analytics is because we have now more computing power. We have cloud computing that help us algorithm to run all the huge amount of data we have in oil and gas and take data advantage of that. So QAQC, the models. The other thing we're doing right now is a lot of the assisted history machine that is running different cases and advising the reservoir engineering to take better model based on uncertainty ranges and workflow. So we're using a lot of data analytics to start to run a huge amount of models, but also recommend which one is going to be the best representation of the subsurface. So it's definitely is here now. Companies working in that direction. As much as we can incorporate a skill set to geoscientists and engineers we will using more and more. But I mean, that's a couple examples that using those algorithms reduce the time of modeling. And I connected to the point I raised before. In the field development plan, we can reduce the time of modeling using more data, not just quality of the model you have it, but also incorporating data from other fields. You definitely better map your uncertainty and better select the best model to represent the reality, and then you can make a better decision. But also you reduce the time of the cycle. So the benefits in there for me. So just an example from drilling, for modeling, and also another example from the generators. We're using now companies using data for generator worldwide, the same brand, they integrate that and trying to do predictive modeling where something's going to fail. So you're already starting to do ahead some what we call eerie alarms for the equipment in the process facility. So you can, rather than to be surprised by the failure, you can, by data, be anticipating what the potential failure in the equipment was. So everything is targeting to maximum uptime, reduce project cycle. Definitely the performance of the upstream would be better and better.
Fascinating, fascinating. In your rich history within Repsol, it's obviously a major IOC. Have you seen the sophistication of the application of data increase significantly, let's say, over the last decade?
Yes, definitely. Yes, as I said, if we're starting, the data is, I mean, there's two effects. We have computer power changes. Before we were limited to computer power. So we can do what we can do, the tool we have. And the data analytics is always there. You can use initially by correlation, that is the data analytics we do, try to identify patterns, but it was limited to by human brain, how many variables the human brain can manage, but also by computer power. So what I think is being changed in the last decades, I can remember when I started in production, I used a spreadsheet and trying to correlate even in some crystal ball in that time, stochastic analysis, but it was limited to few variables because they're the only one we can manage. But now we're using algorithms, a lot of the computing power that allows to process more and more data. And now the algorithms, they learn from that, and we can definitely capitalize the value of data. So rather than to be analyzing data just as a diagnostic or descriptive analytics, I think that we are moving toward to prescriptive. The data is going to recommend what to do. I would just make an analogy to my team. We have in our farms, we have what we call targeted marketing. It's about using data constantly, time on the screen, just gathering data, analyzing, and trying to target it what is you like. The same for us in the oil and gas business. So we have more power, so we need to computing power, use that data to improve our decision making. And as you know, our capex level are very high. So now we're going to more complex and more expensive development. We call heavy oils and conventional and offshore deep water. So we're moving over towards a more complex and difficult project developments. So we use that data to definitely help us first to identify uncertainty, and then to be targeting how to act. So the data should be working for us and recommend what to do. I think we are in the transition, still in transition. I don't saw the uses as massive everywhere in oil and gas, but I think companies are still moving toward that direction.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's again very, very insightful. Benchmarking studies. How does oil and gas benchmarking differ from traditional approaches to reservoir management? I know I've just touched on, or you've just touched on the last 10 years. Why is it gaining traction in the industry now? Why do you think where we are at this present time, things are moving in this particular direction?
Well, I think it's related to the speed of development of decision making. And I'm going to put it in this term. So as much as we get new data, we always focus on what we know in our company. So benchmarking is always good to compare, and that's the traditional use of the data. We just compare, and the data tells you, wow, you're above or below some reference number. So that trigger actions, and that's the company use benchmarking for. I think what is getting more traction is not just be compared to, which is a good tool for organizational and gas to say the best in kind in this field is getting 80% recovery factor, you are around 60. So you pick up and you have an opportunity to upside. But now I think we need to move more than that into the recommended what to do with the field to give you the solution. For example, I'm going to be a very simple example. I got a gas field that with the same characteristic compared to a big group of the same analog of field is 80% recovery factor. Well done. My plan with the halving here going to reach around 65% recovery factor. I'll say, okay, there's a difference in there. Let's spend time studying why it could be the difference and trying to find a potential action plan to close the gap. But rather than to be taking that time, is telling me, all right, not just you are below the best player, the recommendation would be do A, B, and C. You shorten the time and you're focusing time on selecting the action plan rather than to do a full analysis, getting a lot of resources in there, identify what will be the potential solution, and then move to the solution. It's taking so long. So for me, that would be the benefit is the speed to answer. So we know the data work for us, and the data recommend 2 or 3 options. So rather than we're moving ahead, the analysis being done by data analytics, predictive algorithms, and then we focus on the decision, on the value decision, because we need to set some criteria. I would like to see oil and gas, they're more focused on the value decision rather than to be an analysis of the data. So I think would be definitely, that's why I think the data analytics is getting more traction, just a traditional benchmarking, just to comparing compared to a reference value.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think again that's very, very insightful, and I think forecasting ahead probably makes an awful lot of sense, not just with your context, but I think the wider upstream industry globally. That value piece is going to become incredibly important and allow your decision making to be more efficient and get the best out of obviously any benchmarking or predictive benchmarking that's carried out. Analog and subsurface data, Eugenio, access or collecting quality data can be challenging. We know that as a business. What are some common challenges you've encountered when collecting data within your role and remit, and how did you overcome that challenge?
Well, the common challenge is when we have a manual data gathering. If I have to start when I start working in the industry, which is an example when I was in the production engineer side, I also received from the operators a sheet with the tank levels and the calculation of production by manual. So I used to go to that data and put it manually into the system. So that process is a lot of the data from maybe 20 years ago. That's common. Now we are moving a different direction. So the challenge for me was every manual analog data capture that incorporate humans, they're going to be, errors by definition, because the human being, it could be that. So I think the key changer from that time to now, the game changer was the sensory. So you test price of sensors compared to latest 90s to now, the decrease of price was incredible. So that decrease in price and sensors, that the sales of all the industry were moved toward sensory in combination with computing power. So because in the beginning was capture the data, so more sensory, put into the wells, put in the wellheads, it was cost. I was remember all the time, several times in some projects, we were discussing we put a fiber optic into the well or not. And the decision was economically. So all the time was how much we put into the well, because it's the value of information. So I think right now the sensory will help us just to gather information, and we overcome the problem of gathering more information. The second one is there's no human in there, so you can definitely record better. And what we did is just put a protocol of inspection. Any metering of sensor, you have a regulatory maintenance to check this is working properly, and we compensate any error. So we did move to sensoring and then put some control audit with the maintenance protocols to ensure the data gather is good. So beginning now, we encounter the problem. We have a huge amount of data. We have no storage to put it. So we have to start. I remember we spent all the money servers and I put a lot of hard drive to collect all the data. And a cloud computer is sorted out. So now we have very cheap, what we call storage services in the cloud that can access to everyone. So sensoring and the cloud, we overcoming the data, and the computing power we now is starting to capitalize. I think from maybe 5 years ago, 2017, I think we started to capitalizing the data analytics. I remember one example, I use virtual metering. For me, it's one of the data analytics example. When we use a model, and the model of the well depends on the pressure and the temperature, and for that day, that model say a calculated rate, and we know for the ranges that will be there. Anything outside that values, it gives us a pollution in an alarm that something's going wrong with the well. So right to the engineer go a week later or maybe a month later to review the data, look back the data, realize there was a problem. We weren't using data in a very quick way to say, well, virtual metering, you say something outside that calculation, it's going to be a problem in your well, focus on that well because you're going to have problem in the future. So that is one of the best examples of using that data analytics in that regard. So we coming from analog, we spend a lot of money transporting physical data to digital data. I don't think we don't have any more data physically. We have everything digital. Then we sorted it out. The potential problems of error by humans taking the data manually, we sensoring, and then we got a lot of storage in the cloud, and now we're using cloud computing power to start to capitalize the value of that data. I think we still, I don't think so. We achieve the climax of the maximum potential data analytics yet. We're still testing, see the value. We're in the learning curve status yet, until now.
Yeah. Very, very useful to understand that. Also, just from an observational point of view, I think that the industry has changed somewhat, or specifically the upstream industry has changed somewhat, whereby there was a protection, a fairly rigid mindset on data and wishing it to be on server, in-house, behind firewall, etc. But I think there's now an acceptance that cloud is a very safe way of being able to home and harness data in a very safe way. So I think that has disrupted, I guess, more conservative mindset around data that I've certainly seen in my journey within industry as well. So within upstream, how can we best leverage analog data to enhance performance? Appreciate that's quite a wide question, but I'd be keen on your response.
I mean, it's data. I think the challenge is to be more focused on how we can incorporate to the rest of the data. So now I don't think so we have an archive. Like we were using all the data in digital form, and the data is already integrated. In my experience in the company I work with, we have everything now access. It's not just having the data, it's accessible to anyone. So in terms of how we leverage our data, I think we passed a milestone. We really achieved every data was legacy, put in the physical way, is already in the digital form. If I can tell you an example, last week we are looking for new opportunities in a fields, and it was, I just asked to my team, I have information management technician, and asked to them, can you please list me all the documents we have regarding these fields? Just a click, in 5 minutes, we got everything. So even was analog data first. So we have a scan. We know we for example, all well testing. We have some algorithms that read legacy reports in a paper or scan, and they read the data, and we now in a digital form. So we are now we're more concentrated in organizing the data in the documentation, but I think we already running some algorithms on our data to get the most of value of it.
Okay, thank you, Eugenio. Just a quick word from our sponsor. BMark Software is our main platform, and it's the most dependable way to validate your hydrocarbon reserves. It's globally recognized by governments and operators as the first choice for empowering teams with data analytical insights and predictive performance benchmarking. Users of BMark will attain a reliably predicted reserves potential and gain confidence through taking data-derived decisions. Now, Eugenio, industry trends, data, and performance. Do you anticipate challenges for emerging developments in the upstream sector that professionals and I guess enthusiasts should be aware of? Where do you see the most market potential?
I think I want to connect it to what I said before. If we can leverage those data analytics to reduce the time of project cycles, it's definitely going to be a value lever, because we're looking all the time, as I said, to make the data work for us. And I'm going to connect again to the production performance, not just for benchmarking, and you said forecasting, checking forecasting, because that for me the basic. If we check what we are compared to other, we do a QA/QC compared to a huge amount of data, or we are forecasting, it's a good check. I would like to see something else, recommendation, and to support decision making, not just give me, okay, I'm not in the best quartile or not, or it might be my forecast be risky compared to the past. I would like to see what recommendation to be to improve my decision making and the value of the business. I think that for me the big focus and in the value. If you're gonna tell me I'm gonna play the role as a manager, is I have to tell me what are the key variables in my operation from the wells or surface or production facilities that is gonna be helping me to improve the delivery of the production. On not just telling me what the problem is, tell me what is happening, tell me what will be the production forecast, but also tell me how I should add to maintain production at the higher levels.
That was very, very insightful indeed. As we wrap up the conversation today, what leaving advice or recommendations do you have for individuals, organizations, the supply chain as well, looking to make a meaningful impact in this field?
Well, I mean, by fact, so we were just preparing our team to have data analytics as a must. With the skill set, it doesn't matter, you are reservoir engineering, you are production engineer, process engineer, even from financial point of view, financial team, we are now incorporating that skill set as a must. We started 3 years ago doing this program of data analytics, and we started with the engineer first, because that's the one we identified the key teams, but now we're expanding to the full organization. So my recommendation, and I think I have seen the value of it, is to incorporate the data analytics skill. That's a must. Now the future is that to capitalize all the value in decision making of the data, any member of organization should have that as a normal. So that covers technical side, again, to do quickly and to do better, but also for QA/QC, audit, financial point of view is very important. Even for bots, we are having employee support that is working with bot and data analytics and always analyzing data to focus what is important to the organization. So data analytics is not the future, is the present, and it will be the future to capitalize all the value we haven't yet capitalized. We started exploring different areas, and as I mentioned before, and the best example I used to my team, the drilling algorithms that is telling us how to change the operational condition of the rig to improve performance, and recommend the company man how to act. And we tested it, and when I heard the company man said in the beginning I was reluctant to listen or to follow the recommendation. I've been testing this for 6 months, and it's at least maybe 90% of the time giving good recommendation. So for me, it's making my life easier, and at the same time, we are improving performance. So you see, user is happy, business is happy, so organizations and individual go into data analytics. We're doing it in my team, in my organization. We focus technical team first, but also we are moving across the organization. Now, reservoir engineering is using plugins in modeling to do assisted history matching. It's a normal use. We're using cloud computing So we run thousands sometimes of running on simulation to get the best cases. And now it's common reservoir engineering. It's not just understanding the subsurface, but it's very important how to use the data to reduce the time of modeling and to improve the quality of forecasting.
It's very good to have a reinforcement like that. Certainly from our business and how we have evolved, data analysts and data scientists are becoming more and more prevalent and necessary to, as you say, and the theme throughout the discussion today, we produce two things within industry, hydrocarbon and data, and it's what you do with that data. So I think on that note, I'd like to thank you very much indeed for all your insight and perspective. Hopefully that will be inspiring to individuals out there in the listening world. So thank you so much indeed, Eugenio. Pleasure, absolute pleasure. If anyone's interested in our BMark or Belltree's BMark software, you can certainly arrange a demonstration of the product via www.belltreegroup.co.uk. But in closing, please stay tuned for more engaging discussions throughout this year. Thank you so much. Goodbye.